the pilots were piloting ships transporting sawn timber from the sawmills in Haukipudas and Kii, and it was occupied only in the summertime from May to October, and in the busiest times there were about 200 pilotings per year. But because of the land lifting, the pilot station was shut down in 1934, and the pilots moved to Röyttä Islands near Haukipudas. And Krunnit Foundation is the institution which is managing nowadays this Krunnit Nature Reserve. And it was founded in 1936 in Oulu by people who were worried about the decrease of the water birds and especially grey-lag geese in Krunnit archipelago. And with the financial help of the big local companies like Veitsiluoto, they reclaimed the land area of the biggest islands at Krunnit archipelago to bird life, and especially to secure the reproduction of grey-lag goose. And bird life and vegetation was de facto protected since 1937, but officially the area was protected in 1956, and it is actually the first ever protected nature reserve in Finland. And the foundation is still managing the nature reserve, and there are nowadays 14 islands and 4,500 hectares are in the nature reserve, and it has been a part of Natura 2000 networks since 1998. And Oulu University was founded in 1959, and this station was given to the university, or the Department of Zoology of the university in the same year, but this was renovated or transformed from pilot station to a pilot station in 1962, and in that time it looked like that. Before the renovations, it looked a little bit different. And the renovation, all the material to the renovation was transported from the mainland by using horses and sledges and also cars. And you cannot really imagine driving to that island in winter time nowadays. And this is the laboratory space of the building at that time. And yeah, university teaching started here in 1963. The first course was led by Ilpo Hahtela, who is nowadays 85 and still alive. I met him last month in Turku, where he's living nowadays. There are some activities in 1960s. This Marri was the first ship of the station, and there are some field courses, course activities, and also pastime activities. So knitting and playing cards and smoking has been pastime activities. Some activities in 1970s and 1980s. It seems that the stairs has been the most used facility of the station on the basis of these photos. And research, just some highlights about the research done in the field station. Long-term population surveys has been very traditional in this island. It has already been started by the grand old man Einari Merikallio of bird censuses in Finland, and he made the first censuses in 1939. And he was also active in bird ringing, and he actually started the bird ringing over 100 years ago here in the Krunnit Islands, in Maakunni Islands, we ringed 1913, over 100 years ago, the first bird in Finland, which was a rabbit. And later on, several people like Veikko Saukio, Rauno Tenovio, Risto Väisänen, Eero Helle, Pekka Helle, and so on has made censuses of the birds, either water birds or both water and inland birds, where this exists in a given year. So it consists the longest series of bird surveys or censuses in Finland, even though there are gaps in. They have not been surveyed or census every year. And this is showing just trends of some birds like seagulls, herring gull, and seagull or greater black-backed gull. And you can see that the dairy population has been increasing. There are some duck species like Northern Pintail and Northern Southerner. There has been quite a lot of variation, but there's been decreasing trend. In some alkids, they have increased, like razorbill, whereas the other owl-seed black guillemoid population has been decreasing. And for example, great cormorant was away from the island for a long time, but appeared here, somewhere here, and it has been increasing. Nowadays it has been decreasing a little bit. And the other traditional research object has been seals, especially Eero Helle started this tradition in the 1970s. Eero has later been working with in Finnish Game and Fisheries Research Institute, and before his retirement he was the chief director of the institute, and he died last December. But he was studying the reproduction of the ringed seal, and he made at that time quite revolutionary observation that the seals were suffering. They have lower fertility because they have occluded uterine horns because of environmental pollutants like PCB. In the end of the 70s, maybe 60% of the individuals have these occluded uterine horns. After that, the situation has been better, and in 07, in this period, Mervi Kunnasranta has shown that only 20% of the single ringed seals have that occluded uterine horns. Eero also started developed methods to study aerial censuses of ringed seals, and this cutting is from the newspaper Karela from 1984. This is Eero Helle, this is the pilot, Jack Westerman, and this little helper, Eero's little helper, that's actually me. And other people has continued this area of censuses like Tero Härkönen and with other authorities from different countries. And seal research has been continuing, it has been active also later on. Especially Mervi Kunnasranta has been quite active, and she has, for example, studied the diet of the seals, grey seal and ringed seal, and you can see that the ringed seals seems to have quite small prey items, whereas the grey seal can use salmon and trout also. This is based on traditional methods using the hard parts found in the stomach of the species. Later on, this diet has been studied using more modern method, DNA-based method, actually quantitative PCR by Rodrigo Esparza Salas. Rodrigo was my former postdoctoral student, and he studied the diet of grey seal in the EcoSeal project, and this is showing that with this method you can, the main prey items are still the same, but you can find a much more a larger variety of prey items using this method. And yeah, Rodrigo is here taking reference samples for his studies. Rodrigo is actually Mexican who has studied in Australia, and he was here for a while, and then he moved to Sweden, and he's nowadays working in Naturhistoriska Riksmuseet in Stockholm. Last year they published together with several other authors a paper where they compared different methods for gray seal diet using hard parts and DNA metabarcoding and also stable isotopes. Just showing here the fry items when you are using hard parts or DNA. And then also the archaeological research has been quite traditional in the islands, especially Jari Okkonen, who has studied the archaeology of different kind of stone structures in northern part of around the Bothnian Bay. This drawing is by Jari. He's studied the basements of ruins of some fishing huts in Äijänharju, which is not very far from the station. And those fishing huts were built just beside very big boulders, and like in this modern day set fishing hut also. There's one point from 1867 found in this research, and this archaeological research has been continuing later on also. I still have one minute. But maybe I'll stop here. Thank you for your attention. The sea eagles are quite recent inhabitants of the island. They were away from the island quite a long time. Nowadays they are reproducing quite well, and there are a couple of nests in the islands already. But Essi is now continuing about underwater research. I'm not so sure how non-underwater seals are, but maybe Essi is not speaking about seals. Okay, you're welcome. Any questions?
I know we are all hungry, so I will keep this short. Mostly show pictures. Yes. So the first research, like Jouni said, the Oulu University started in 1959, and they had the first aquatic fauna course at the Krunnit station at 63. And the first Arandas are the research vessels owned by Finnish Environment Institute. The first one was visiting the northern Bothnian Bay in 1964. And then we had the International Biological Program from 1964 to 1974. And it said that the program was about biological studies focusing on the productivity of biological resources, human adaptability to environmental change, and environmental change itself. So anybody who claims that they've only yesterday heard about environmental change can go to this program, which was meant for studying the environmental change in the marine areas already this time. The first university scuba diving course in Finland was held in Oulu University in 1966. They had about 20 students, mostly from Oulu University, but some coming from all the way from Helsinki. They had 2 sets of scuba gear to share, everybody had their own fins and masks and a snorkel, but they had 2 aqualungs. And the scuba diving scientists were needed for the international biological program. So that's what they started to do. This is Pentti Kangas from 1967 diving at Krunnit area. I was just on the phone with his wife on Sunday, and she was telling me that she's really excited that I'm showing these old pictures here. And during that time, they made some underwater master's theses, like for example, this one was a study of benthic fauna around Krunnit archipelago, especially on stony bottoms by scuba diving methods. He was vacuuming or hoovering stuff from the rocks. And another study was about the vegetation. But then things quieted down in these areas, and then later on 2 national parks were established on both sides of the border, 1991 on the Finnish side and 1995 on the Swedish side. And on the Swedish side, they were doing biological mapping in 1991, 93, and 99. And on the Finnish side in 1993 and 4. And I called the guys who were doing the Finnish underwater marine investigations, and they said that they had no idea that the Swedish were doing their studies right across the border. I think they could almost see each other, but they had no idea that the other ones were doing something very similar for the national parks. Then again, things quieted down until Perämeri Life cooperation with Bothnian Bay environmental authorities was going on in 2001 to 2005. They didn't do any field studies, but they collected everything that was available for the environmental authorities to better manage the Bothnian Bay. And this sounds pretty much like Simbot has been doing, except that we also did underwater studies and field work. And then, like Markku said, Velmu National Underwater Program started in 2004. And then we started using Krunnit station, field station again. And then came Simbot, of course. And we have a great team from across the border, from Sweden and Finland. And we've been using the Krunnit field station a lot. And this is from last summer when we had quite many of the organization people there. I can see at least Arno there, GTK people. We had a big dance outside. And now we're here. That's all I have to say.